Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today, we're diving into a movie review of The Wedding Party 2, Destination Dubai. So picture this. You're in Dubai for like this romantic getaway, and suddenly, boom, an accidental proposal leads to a big, huge wedding. And the families, well, they're from completely different worlds.
Yeah, talk about a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah.
But also a lot of laughs, you know?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that this movie, it's a sequel. The first Wedding Party was a smash hit.
Yeah.
So there's already this kind of like cultural significance attached to it.
So we're not just talking about a movie, we're talking about like a phenomenon, huh? You know, I was doing some reading about Nigerian cinema, and it seems like these big celebratory films, they're a big part of their film scene.
Oh, absolutely. Nigerian cinema, or what they often call Nollywood, it's a huge deal. Known for its like vibrant storytelling, a lot of it centered around family and relationships and their traditions and weddings. Well, with all the drama and the joy and everything, it's the perfect subject for this kind of filmmaking.
Makes sense. So in The Wedding Party 2, we've got Nonso, who accidentally proposes to his girlfriend Deirdre in Dubai. And here's where the clash comes in. Nonso's family, they're Nigerian, while her family's from British aristocracy. Oof, I'm already cringing just thinking about those first meetings.
Yeah, and the film definitely plays up that awkwardness.
Yeah.
You really see the contrast between the traditional Nigerian engagement ceremony, which is a really big deal with all sorts of rituals, and the more like reserved, British way of doing things. For someone who's never seen a Nigerian engagement ceremony, it's a whirlwind of color and music and just joyous chaos. People dancing, singing, showering the couple with gifts and blessings. It's quite a sight.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Totally different from a quiet dinner and a ring exchange. Even just watching the trailer, the movie is visually stunning. I mean, the colors, the outfits, the whole Dubai backdrop, it all feels so extravagant.
Oh, the visuals are definitely intentional. You see those bustling streets of Lagos just bursting with life right next to those sleek skyscrapers of Dubai. It's like a visual representation of the two different worlds these characters come from. But even with all the grandeur and the culture clashes, it's ultimately a story about family, about two families trying to find a way to connect. Yeah.
And probably messing it up in hilarious ways along the way. The review I was reading mentioned this one character, Mrs. Tinued Coker. Apparently she's absolutely hilarious.
Oh, she steals every scene she's in. Played by Sola Sobowale, who's like a Nollywood legend.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Coker, she's like this force of nature, full of traditional wisdom, but she's also got this sharp wit. She's like the embodiment of those strong Nigerian mothers. Just imagine her trying to deal with the British family's whole stiff upper lip thing in their understated ways. It's comedy gold.
Oh, man. I can only imagine. So we've got these cultural clashes, this hilarious character, and of course the romance at the center of it all. Did the review mention anything about the lead actors?
It did. It praised the chemistry between Enyinna Nwigwe, who plays Nonso, and Daniela Down, who plays Deirdre. And it also mentioned that there are some familiar faces from the first Wedding Party in there too, like Adesua Atomi and Binky Wellington. So it's like a little treat for the fans of the first one.
A little reunion for the fans, but also a good place for newcomers to jump in, huh? So what was the overall verdict in the review?
It gave the film 4 out of 5 stars, praising the entertainment value and how well it captures the energy of Nigerian celebrations. But what I found interesting was how it also mentioned the role of technology and how we experience movies these days.
Yeah. They talked about the MovieKaTicket app, which seems like a cool way for movie fans to stay up to date and share their thoughts, right?
Exactly. I think it shows how things are changing, how people engage with movies, especially with all the globalization happening in movies like The Wedding Party 2, finding audiences way beyond Nigeria.
So we've got this Nigerian blockbuster, bridging cultures, showcasing traditions, and making people laugh. But I have to ask, is there something more here? Something beyond the lighthearted entertainment?
I think there is. I mean, beneath the humor and all those beautiful visuals, the film also asks some serious questions about cross-cultural relationships, about the compromises people have to make. That's something we should explore more deeply, I think.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that a bit more. What are some of the challenges, and maybe more importantly, the rewards of bridging these cultural divides?
Well, just imagine trying to plan a wedding that honors both Nigerian and British traditions. That's just the beginning.
I bet. So let's dig into how the film explores those themes, what really stands out, and how all this connects to the bigger conversation about relationships in an increasingly globalized world.
Absolutely. And maybe we can even think about how this relates to those of us who aren't planning some huge destination wedding, but still, encounter cultural differences in our own lives.
That's a great point. So after a quick break, we'll get back into The Wedding Party 2 and really start to explore the deeper layers of this cultural phenomenon. All right, so we know The Wedding Party 2 isn't just about the glamour of a destination wedding, right? It's looking at this whole dynamic of cross-cultural relationships.
Exactly, and it does in a way that's like relatable.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the one.
Insightful, too. Think about it. Even if you're not planning a wedding, navigating different cultural expectations is something we all do, right? At work, with friends, even within our own families sometimes.
Oh, totally. We've all had those moments like, wait, is that how you do things here? Or did I completely misread that situation? It's like the movie is holding up a mirror to those little everyday culture clashes.
Yeah, it does. And I think what's good about the film is that it doesn't shy away from the challenges. You know, there are times when things get really tense, misunderstandings that lead to awkward situations, even arguments between the families. It's real.
Yeah, the review mentioned that the families have very different ideas about how the wedding should be. Like, can you give us an example from the movie where that clash is really obvious?
Well, there's this scene where Nonso's mom, Mrs. Coker, insists on having a traditional Nigerian ceremony with all the specific rituals and outfits. But Deirdre's family, they're used to a more Western-style wedding, you know. White dress, formal reception, all that. So it creates this, like, hilarious tension. But it's a very real tension, too, you know, between tradition and expectation.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would be super funny, especially with a character like Mrs. Coker involved. But it can't just be for laughs, right? There's got to be something deeper there.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree.
That scene, and others like it, they highlight how difficult it can be to blend traditions, to find a way to honor both families and their cultures. It says something about love, you know. It's not always about finding someone who's exactly like you. Sometimes it's about learning to appreciate and bridge those differences.
So the movie's saying sometimes love means stepping outside of your comfort zone, embracing something unfamiliar, even if it gets a little messy.
Exactly. I think that's such a powerful message, especially nowadays when everyone's interacting with people from different backgrounds all the time. The film reminds us that being different isn't a bad thing. It's something to explore, you know, something to celebrate.
It makes me think about the fact that it's a destination wedding in Dubai. Dubai isn't just a fancy place. It's this huge mix of cultures. It's like a metaphor for the whole idea of blending traditions that the movie is trying to show.
Oh, you're so right. Dubai wasn't chosen randomly. It's where East meets West, where tradition meets modern. It's the perfect backdrop for a story about two families and two cultures coming together, trying to make it work.
So the setting itself is kind of like another character in the movie. But with all this talk about cultural clashes and compromise, does the movie actually show how these families figure things out, or is it just all conflict?
Oh, no, you definitely see them connecting. There are moments where the families really connect, you know, like genuine connection. They laugh together. They learn from each other. They even start to appreciate the beauty of each other's traditions.
Okay, good. It's not just pointing out the differences. It's about finding common ground, too.
Yeah.
So how does the movie show that connection happening? What are some examples?
Okay, so there's this scene where Deirdre's dad, who's really reserved at first, like skeptical of this whole Nigerian wedding thing.
Yeah.
He ends up dancing with Mrs. Coker. It's this small moment, but it says a lot, you know. It shows how powerful shared experiences can be in breaking down those walls between people.
Oh, that's great. It's those little moments of genuine human connection that can really bridge the gap between cultures. I'm kind of starting to think I need to see this movie, not just for the laughs, but for what it says about how we deal with differences in our own lives.
Me too. And what makes The Wedding Party 2 work so well is that it gets these important messages across without being preachy. You know, it's still a fun romantic comedy at its core.
Yeah, it's not like a lecture about cultural sensitivity. It's entertaining, but it has heart. That's what makes it so effective.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the culture stuff, the humor, the deeper themes, but what about the technical aspects? The review mentioned that it's visually stunning.
It is. The cinematography is beautiful, the costumes are just so vibrant, and the editing is really well done. You can tell they put a lot of effort into making each scene look great, you know, to create a really engaging visual experience.
I keep thinking about that contrast you were talking about earlier, the energy of Lagos versus the sleek, modern look of Dubai. Those visuals must be super important in telling the story of these two worlds coming together.
Oh, they are. It's not just about the locations either. Even the colors they use are intentional. You see those bright colors of traditional Nigerian clothes next to the more muted tones of what the British family wears. It's subtle, but it reinforces those cultural differences while also hinting at the idea that those colors can blend together.
That's so cool. So they're using visuals to tell a deeper story. It's like a whole visual language that adds to the dialogue and the plot.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think takes The Wedding Party to beyond your average romantic comedy. It uses all those filmmaking tools to create a richer, more meaningful experience for the audience.
Okay, so we've got this great story, these incredible visuals, and this underlying message about bridging cultures. What about the impact of the film? I mean, the first one was huge, and this one seems to be doing really well too. What does that say about this kind of storytelling?
I think it speaks to how universal the themes are, Whether you're Nigerian, British, or from anywhere else, we all want love, family, acceptance. And to see those themes explored through different cultures, it just makes it more interesting, more powerful.
It's like the movie is saying, hey, we're all more alike than we are different, and celebrating those differences can be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that these films are so successful, even globally, tells me that people want stories that reflect the diversity of the world, Stories that make you think about how we connect with each other across cultures.
So it's more than just entertainment. It's become this cultural thing that starts conversations and maybe even helps people bridge some of those divides in real life. That's pretty amazing.
It is. And it reminds me of what we were talking about with technology, and how we experience and share these stories. The Wedding Party 2 is reaching people all over the world through streaming services and social media. It's creating a global conversation about culture, love, and understanding each other.
And that brings us back to the MovieKaTicket app. It's not just for buying tickets. It's a place where people can talk about these things and engage with movies from around the world.
Absolutely. It's a great example of how technology helps break down those barriers and lets us experience stories and cultures that we might not have had access to before.
So technology is amplifying the movie's message,
Right.
making it accessible to more people and creating those cross-cultural conversations.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something worth celebrating. It shows that even in a world where everything is digital, the power of storytelling is still really strong. It can still connect us and make us care about each other.
All right, so we've covered a lot, from those funny characters to the deeper themes of cultural understanding and even the role of technology. But before we finish up, I want to go back to something you said earlier about The Wedding Party 2, reflecting those everyday cultural moments we all experience, those little clashes.
Oh, yeah. That really stood out to me about the film. It's not just some made-up story in a glamorous setting. It's based on real human experiences and challenges that we can all relate to, even if we've never been to Dubai or a Nigerian wedding.
So even though the movie is about this fancy destination wedding, it's really about those universal human things, right? Like communication, compromise, and finding connection despite our differences.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so powerful. It takes something that's complex and challenging and presents it in a way that's both fun and thought-provoking. Makes you laugh, it makes you think, and in the end, it leaves you feeling hopeful about bridging those cultural divides.
All right, so we've explored the humor, the cultural complexities, the visuals, and the impact of The Wedding Party 2, Destination Dubai. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a thought to think about.
I like that. What will it be?
So think about this for a sec. Have you ever been in a situation, maybe not a crazy Dubai wedding, but like any situation where you had to deal with someone else's cultural norms? What were the challenges or even like the funny moments? Anything that really surprised you?
It's funny because even small cultural differences can feel huge when you're right in the middle of them. I remember this one time.
Ooh, a story. Let's hear it.
Okay, well, this is a little embarrassing, but it just shows how easy it is to totally misunderstand something. I was visiting a friend's family in another country, and they offered me these, well, they looked like cookies, right? Delicious cookies. So I took one and bit into it and gained. It was like this savory fish paste pastry.
Oh no, what did you do?
I'm pretty sure my face turned green, but I swallowed it. And I'm like, delicious. Later, I found out it was like a special local thing, and it would have been so rude to refuse it.
That's what I love about this whole conversation. It reminds us that cultural differences aren't always about big, obvious stuff like weddings or holidays. They're in everything. And sometimes they just hit you out of nowhere in the funniest ways.
Right. And that's why I think The Wedding Party 2 is so good. It takes these big culture clashes, Nigerian versus British, traditional versus modern, and it puts them into these little moments that we can all relate to, those awkward moments, misunderstandings. But in the end, people wanting to connect.
It's like the movie is saying, hey, we've all been there, We've all felt out of place or made a mistake or just didn't get where someone else was coming from. But with humor and some heart, those differences, they can actually bring us together instead of pulling us apart.
And that brings us back to the big picture. This film It's not just about a wedding. It's about building those connections in a world where it feels like everyone's getting more and more divided. It's about realizing that our differences, they don't have to be a bad thing. They can make our lives better, help us understand the world better.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, I think what we can take away is this. Whether you're planning a trip to Dubai, going to a wedding with different cultures, or just trying to understand people who see things differently, The Wedding Party 2, Destination Dubai, is a good reminder that laughing together, trying to understand each other, and being willing to try new things can make a huge difference.
Well said. And who knows? Maybe this deep dive will get you to check out the film, learn a bit about Nigerian culture, or even just think about your own experiences with different cultures.
Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.